Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber. I'm Jared Kimber. Morning, everyone. Well, we had a weird day because there wasn't a morning game or an afternoon game or a night game. I don't really know how to mentally work out these games, but there wasn't an extra game. But we had 2 games on at the same time, of which I think at no stage did they actually overlap because of rain. If I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember back. I know I had multiple screens available to me, but I'm not even sure I needed multiple screens in the end. So it was very, very interesting. Well, obviously, we'll talk only a little bit about England, Scotland. I thought England bowled exceptionally bad at times to Scotland for a team that they should know well enough and certainly would have done their research on. They bowled wide to George Munsey. They bowled spin early to George Munsey. They bowled the same ball over and over again to Michael Jones for a period as well. They really didn't seem to get their plans together all that well. And then, of course, when they finally got George Munsey out, it was a no ball. It was a really poor performance. I was thinking about this recently. Perhaps the best performance against an associate so far has been Afghanistan playing against Uganda, right? Where they just went for them the whole way through and kept trying to put pressure on them and win that game. And a few of the other teams have just been a little bit tentative against the associates. And we see that and in World Cups quite a bit. You know, associates don't tend to overthrow the major teams in World Cups all that often outside of major tournaments. But in World Cups, it feels like we see it. And it's that tension of worrying about failing and everything else. It's very, very bizarre. Anyway, let's get on with the show. And we'll quickly go through this. So you can see here that Scotland is a very good play team. You know, Jones and Munsey at the top. Very explosive in very different ways as well. So it means it's hard to come up with a great plan against them. England had been bowling well in the power play, and they had Jofra Archer back. I think some of this good bowling in the power play for England, though, is potentially players who are no longer there. It didn't look like a great one for them. They went with Wood, who I thought bowled fine, but I don't know if he'll be as useful in the power play at other times. And Jofra Archer obviously got hit for some runs as well. And then they threw Moeen Ali in there, which I thought was a bit random. But they don't have that kind of David Willey, Sam Curran type of bowler. I'm trying to think. There must be another one I'm missing as well. Reece Topley type of bowler at the moment. So Jofra Archer's second over was really good. His first one wasn't very good, but I think he has to make a bigger impact with the new ball there. And so this was the until 6.2 over mark. So you can see Scotland were going at 8 runs and over. They had lost the 1 wicket, which was then brought back on the no ball. And then they managed to score at about 10 runs, 10.5 runs and over after that. It wasn't a particularly easy wicket to score quickly on, I thought. There was one that to Munsey that just rolled along the ground at one stage. And it would have been really interesting to see how England would have chased whatever total the Duckworth-Lewis would have allowed for in the end. But let's say the 109 of 10 overs, it might have been slightly trickier than we thought it would be. I still would have backed them to do it. But it would have been interesting if that game had gone ahead. But they really did give Scotland a huge chance. And it reminded me of the Ireland game in the last T20 World Cup, where, you know, a little bit of rain, England weren't really on it mentally, and the other team was playing some good cricket. Obviously, we just had the 2 players here. Munsey never quite got away. And really, I suppose it was the overs from Adil Rashid at the end that you really wanted him to do the damage, and he didn't quite manage to get the boundaries that he can score, but he threatened it, and there was certain that little period. I thought Michael Jones batted really well at times. You know, if you bowl back over lengths to him, he just looks like such an organised player. I know he hasn't played all that much in top level cricket at the moment. He's been involved with some second 11 teams in English cricket, and he hasn't got a huge amount of games behind him. I'm just having a look now. So he's got about 100 professional games. Yeah, I think that's right. About 100 professional games. Batting average of 33 in first class cricket. List A cricket 29 and T20s 26. But you watch him bat, and he certainly looks a lot better than that. And he reminds me a lot of Andy Balbirnie, who's another, then associate player who played county cricket and never really broke through in county cricket. And then when he matured, he was a much better player. Michael Jones just has so much to his game that I really enjoy. And we talked about this with Munsey and the sweep shot. I just thought it was interesting that England tried Moeen Ali so early against him. I mean, that pitch might have actually been a good pitch for spinners. So, a fair play to them that they went with that. But it is bowling spin to Munsey in the power play. Feels just unnecessary. And I think it gives Scotland a big advantage that you don't really need to give them. I think the over only went for 10 or 12, so they got away with it. But it gave Munsey a couple of cheap fours. And, he hit one really good shot off the quicks in that first bit. If you bowl poorly to him, he will absolutely destroy pace. But if you bowl well to him, you make it quite tough on him to score early on. Don't give him any cheap ones with the spinners, I think, in that kind of situation. And, of course, they didn't get any wickets. Wood ended up with 2 overs for 11. Interesting to see if we keep seeing him early on. Archer, I think, 1 over for 10 or 11, and then 1 over for 1 or 2 after that. Moeen Ali bowled 1 good over and got whacked a little bit. Jordan getting smashed at the end of the power play was really interesting. Again, it's an over they probably want him to bowl, and he didn't look ideal. Rashid had a great last over, but certainly went for some runs before that. But, pulled it back at the end. And, you wouldn't usually be bowling Rashid in that situation, so you expect his figures to be a little bit worse here. But, yeah, this is... this over from Moeen Ali, I just thought was a little bit bizarre and unnecessary. And you could see Rashid had to come back on after the rain break and got whacked straight away. But pulled it back in that last over. What does it say about Scotland? They were really, really buzzing to get back on the ground. I think a friend of mine said that the covers were barely coming off and they were out there. They thought they were in that game. I think they were right to believe that. Whether they would have won it or not, they probably had like a 25% chance of winning from there. But they obviously thought that meant something to them. What else did I want to say about that? I think we've seen sometimes with Scotland, they have looked a little bit tentative at World Cups compared to, if you compare them to Ireland, which is the natural team to compare them to. And I know Scottish fans hate this, but, quite often you will watch Ireland in a World Cup, even before they were this Ireland, and they look like they were really in the contest a little bit. And sometimes Scotland have felt a little bit more tentative. I thought the way they went about it was really good, and they can, through their batting, certainly put some pressure on teams, and especially if they bat first. All right, let's get to the actual game with the actual cricket. So we could see here that the Netherlands were always going to be a problem for Nepal with that new ball. They're really dominant new ball bowling lineup, and Nepal is a decent team at the top, and they just lost too many wickets, right? And really slid back in to a position they never had a chance to get ahead. They're not a great batting lineup then until the death, and the problem with that is they'd lost too many wickets to be able to cash in on that. And then you can see here they're about a par bowling side altogether, whereas Netherlands start very well and then tail off a little bit when it comes to their batting. So let's just look at how that played out. So the 2 early wickets, I actually think they were probably lucky only to lose 2 wickets. Kingma was just bowling so wide that they couldn't actually nick it, and he was swinging the ball so much that he couldn't get one. But they did then lose a bunch of wickets in that next period. So it certainly came back quite violently there. And then I thought they did okay towards the end to find some runs. I think Karen KC came in and certainly got some runs. And Rohit was still out there for a while, the captain, doing a good job. So that actually did well, but the problem was they lost so many wickets that you could see here they didn't quite make it to the 20 over mark, which probably didn't cost them the game, but we will talk about that in a minute. Rohit's 35 of 37. It was a tough wicket and the ball was moving around a little bit and he didn't have much support. I thought he batted really well all the way through. And then, as I said, Karen came in at the end and slogged a couple and certainly got them to some sort of a total. Pringle was ridiculous, really, his bowling of the spin and bounce that he got, considering it was a wicket for seam bowlers. I thought he was really, really good. I love the way he went about it all the way through. As I mentioned earlier, Kingma just has to find off stump a little bit more. Baz Delita got away with his overs, and I know he got a couple of wickets here, but I've certainly seen him bowl a lot better. Logan Van Beek at one stage looked like he was going to get an LBW every single ball. And Van Meekeren was just a little bit too fast, I think, for Nepal, and was probably unlucky not to get a couple more wickets. This is Pringle's career, so we could see here he's probably genuinely been more of a defensive bowler. He's kind of a tall left arm spinner. His father was obviously a fast bowler for New Zealand. I really like him as a cricketer. There was a game where they played Ireland in that tri-series. I think it was a tri-series very recently that he almost stole the game with the bat. He's got a lot of different skills that I think are really good. And, obviously, even though he's playing for the Netherlands, he's a finger spinner, a tall left arm finger spinner from New Zealand with glasses. There is a bit of Dan Vettori in his cricket, as in, other than just those things that I've just mentioned, he's quite smart and he's thinking his way through situations. You can see it when he's batting and when he's bowling. So I really like that. But you'd see here just how few times he's gone it over 8 and over, right? He hasn't played a huge bunch of games and he will probably get a couple more in this tournament. But he can be very, very economical consistently and not usually a big wicket taker. So yesterday was a bit of a standout from that. But I really like the way he bowled. We could see in here, pitching those balls just outside off stump and on the angle. Some good bowling there. You can see the discipline of Logan Van Beek as well, which I thought was another very, very interesting one. Let's see if I can. So this is Pringle's and Van Beek's wicket. Yeah, I just want to make sure that was Van Beek. So I'll just play through. So this is the kind of ball I was talking from Van Beek. In fact, are they going to show both? What's that wicket? Sorry, I'm just trying to remember what all these. Yeah, so there's Pringle. Okay, so let's start with Pringle here. So you see that's just a ball that's stopping in the wicket a little bit. But what he did very, very well was use that angle over and over again to create a ball that they had to take a risk off. We've seen a lot of players, so far in this tournament, bowl sliders. This isn't a slider. That is a proper, ball that you are trying to get some purchase on. And because of that, it turns and bounces. And that might have been because he realized early on that the wicket was doing that. Because I have seen him slide the ball through as well. This is when he gets Sar out later. You can see, again, the flight on that one. And he's flighting the ball specifically because he wants that bounce, right? Like he realizes that there is a real chance of getting extra bounce on this. And again, getting up and under and, the batter got up and under. But, I mean, just have a look at the flight on this particular ball. It's just a little bit slower. He's not sliding it in. He's not trying to dart it a little bit. And he's allowing a player to come down the wicket and try and whack him away. I think that's really, really good signs. And then we'll get to Van Beek's wickets, which are here, aren't they? One thing I like about Van Beek is his accuracy. So you just saw that in that pitch map of, middle and off. He's a very clever bowler again. We know, again, he has some good batting there. Occasionally, you see that wobble ball just nips back a little bit. It's going to hit the stumps. He had another couple of LBs, I think, that one might have been nicked. And there was another one that wasn't given out. And he is just keeping the pressure on the players all the way through when you have a look at that. So again, hitting the top of off stump there. In some ways, it's a little bit of a slot ball, but against the number 10, was it? Who was batting then? Gulshan. I actually thought Gulshan batted quite well, by the way. But, keeping the stumps in play, and he was mixing the pace up quite a bit. And then you can see he cashes in with another wicket at the end. Again, you can see how close this ball is. Let's see if I can pause it at the right time. You can see how close that ball is to the top of the stumps when... There we go. Oh, it's slightly back of a length, but he's keeping those stumps in play all the time. And look, he's not a particularly fast bowler, and he doesn't have a great slow ball, Logan Van Beek. Also like that he called that and called it himself. But I really like the way he goes about, the deliveries there. So good work from him. And because of that, Netherlands got an under par score to chase. They lost the 1 wicket early on, and Vikram came in, and he's a frustrating player because it's clear how much talent he has, and sometimes he gets stuck, and sometimes he gets confused, and sometimes he plays silly shots. But they were well on top here, and he went out in this period. And O'Dowd is a brilliant player at staying in World Cups. He might be one of the most consistent run scorers in World Cup cricket over a long period of time, just by his ability to just stay in. I wonder what he's... I think he struggled in the last ODI World Cup. But my memory is he's the last two T10... I'll start again. Last T20 World Cups. His ability to stay in. And I was thinking to myself, he's probably a perfect person for an associate team to have on this kind of chase. You're not going after that many runs. The wicket is difficult, but not unplayable. But you need one person to stay in. The problem is that they had lost 2 wickets. And you can see here they scored 6 runs and over, 5 runs and over. So after 11 overs, you're talking about 5.5 runs and over. Then they do lose wickets, and it goes even slower. And it took a couple of late boundaries. And if O'Dowd had been caught long off by the captain, Nepal could have won this. I don't think they would have, but it could have been a similar Namibia-Oman type situation. They really put a lot of pressure on themselves there. And you can see that, it's hard to blame O'Dowd because he's made 54 off 48 with a strike rate of 112. It's hard to blame him when literally no one else in the side made any runs at all. But he never put any pressure back on. And it's something that we've seen a lot. These trickier wickets, and we've seen a lot of low-scoring games in this World Cup. I don't think you can just sit there. West Indies versus Papua New Guinea, Namibia versus Oman, 2 very good examples of that. Even Sri Lanka versus South Africa. And this game, it's the 4th one in that series. And if you think about it, only one of those games has been won by the bowling team. But you could argue, only one? Wait, no, because Oman lost, didn't they, in the end? So none of them have been won. Yeah, by the bowling team. But the bowling, eventually, our team is going to lose this way because these teams are taking it. When they were, they needed 19 off 18 or 25 off 24. There's no reason to be with that many wickets in hand in that kind of a situation. We can see, we've O'Dowded him instead of O'Dowd there. Apologise to Max and his DJ company. You can see here, he scored 123 runs in the 2021 World Cup. And my memory of that was he was like the only guy making runs in those games. And by conventional methods, he didn't have great stats in there. But you can see here that he had a true strike rate of +7 and a true average of +39, which is quite impressive. And then he came back and he made 242 runs in their next campaign, right? Again, he's plus on true average and a plus on true strike rate. He's never going to have a massive true strike rate. It's not the kind of player that Max O'Dowd is. But he is the sort of player who can consistently make runs, and he's so important for an associate team. Just I'm honestly not sure they would have won this game. Oh, we've ordered him again. I'm not sure that they would have won this game without it. Oh, look, did you see that live change? It's Muku in the background, or Varun in the background. But you can see here, this is his runs in international cricket against pace bowling. So he scored 1,000 runs. He's got a slightly below par strike rate against them, but he doesn't go out to bowling. And that was kind of what I was saying before. But you can see he does go after spin. I was actually a little bit surprised he didn't maybe try and clear a couple of the leg side boundaries against Nepal as well because of that. But he goes out to spin slightly more than average. But his true strike rate is +10. I love watching him at World Cups, and he seems to become almost an entirely different batter. Dipendra Ari, look, let's be honest here. I want to see him bat and go nuts. That's what we're here for him. But he did well, but just in a couple of overs. I think he came on quite late. Somehow, I thought at times he was the one who might have had a chance to actually get them back in the game and get them up in front of the game, and it didn't quite happen. Gulson was the only one that sort of struggled a little bit. Oh, actually, Abanish as well. But you can see here, there was 4 fairly strong bowling performances. But of course, they needed 6 really strong bowling performances in this. And the other issue here is just the wickets, right? They just needed more wickets, and didn't quite give themselves the opportunity to win the game from there. But geez, considering what their batters did, they certainly kept themselves in it quite a bit. And let's just do a little bit of preview of the game. What, in half an hour? Hour's time? I should know that. It's hour's time, isn't it? Because they've changed some of the times, which has really got in my head. These are the 2 teams. So you can see India here, absolute bilateral monster when it comes to T20 cricket. Apologies, everyone. Came from nowhere. Yeah, you can see an absolute bilateral monster. And Ireland, not a great T20 team, but they've started playing a little bit better of recent times. This also kind of looks like Darth Vader's helmet, right? It's a hell of a shape. So if we go through the 2 teams, India's batting in the middle overs has been their absolute strength. And they have cashed in at the death, but they haven't gone crazy. But you can see here, largely a batting team. The bowling power play hasn't been great. Obviously, a Bumrah will help there a little bit, but perhaps injuries and even form at times maybe has played a little bit of an impact there. I expect them to be a bit better in this tournament there. Bowling in the middle overs has not been an issue. The combination of all the different spinners that they have on option there. 5 world-class spinners that they can go through at any stage. And then bowling at the death is quite good, which again, not all of this will be Bumrah playing as well. So we expect a little bit of a boost there. Can see they still have a tendency to play within themselves a little bit in the power play. Like if we compare that to a team like England, anyway. This is Ireland. So Ireland is an interesting team because they kind of believe in making pass scores. So you can see here how much they kind of follow that, and their idea is that they kick on at the end. I would argue that they haven't quite kicked on as much, but they're putting themselves in a position to make that sort of 170, 180 score. The issue is that they're not really backed it up on the ball side of things. And this is the part that they need to work for them in this World Cup. Mark Adair at his absolute best can swing the ball both ways. Perhaps Josh Little can bowl a little bit in the middle here as well. They're always going to be kind of just throwing anyone who wants to have a bowl in the middle. I don't expect that to be a great consistent threat for them. And then they should be a little bit better at the death with Josh Little available to them. But they're, outside of that, a very, very bad death bowling team. And it certainly doesn't work for them. I would say that I think in the last 6 months or so, they're playing better T20 cricket. And so a lot of this is, of course, a year and a half or 2 years prior to that as well. So they have played a little bit better. We saw how they played against Pakistan, for instance. I don't expect them to beat India, but in general, I expect them to be a little bit better in this tournament than we see here. And this is teams versus spin since the 2022 World Cup. So we can see India averaging 8.28 runs per over and 40 runs per wicket. So massive outliers here. No one else is above 30. No. Thank you, West Indies. That's interesting. West Indies have the second best average. West Indies whack it too. Guys like Roston Chase and Shai Hope have kind of reinvented themselves as spin hitters. And then you've got Hetmeyer and Purem when they're available as well. And it's really interesting to see these 3 teams scoring so quickly against spin and not England, which I do find interesting. Anyway, that's probably a conversation for another one. But here's Ireland. I think Ireland's biggest problem is it's the both, right? They don't have a good average against spin. They're averaging under 24 there, and they're slow, right? So they're the 4th slowest side on this graphic, and they're losing wickets at about the 4th lowest rate as well. Yeah. So, yeah, I got that right. This is really interesting, by the way. And we noticed this a little bit in the ODI World Cup. But certainly this is an issue for Ireland, and that's one reason why I don't think they can beat India outside of, then new ball bowlers taking a bunch of wickets, or them making such a good start of it that they can knock the spinners around, and it doesn't affect them too much. But who knows what's going to happen in that, who bats first and who bowls first. It's always harder to tell those sorts of things, but Ireland should be at a disadvantage there. That's the end of the scoreboard for today. We will take a quick break here, and then we'll come back with some of the ads. No, we'll take a quick break to show the ads. When we'll come back, and I'll answer a couple of your questions and see if there's any super chats or anything else. But I'm Jared Kimber, and this is Scoreboard. Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber. If you make any content, Minvo Pro is the tool for you. Take your long format content and cut it and slice it for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so many clips. Try Minvo.pro now. All right, welcome back. We got a couple of questions. Amand says, given Scotland had more power play overs and more bowling clarity, wasn't the DLS bump a little bit generous to them? They didn't lose any wickets, and that's how DLS works. I mean, it's not a great method, and we probably should have moved beyond it, especially for T20 cricket. But remember that while a lot of good work went into DLS, it is essentially a gimmick to make sure that the game goes ahead on TV. We would have been able to play the game on TV had it ever stopped raining. I still think, they were none for 60 off. No, what were they? None for 52 off. 6.2. What are we thinking they were going to score on that wicket? Like, just a normal team from that position is probably going to score 160, 170. That is a much easier chase than chasing 110 in 10 overs. But 110 in 10 overs with 10 wickets in hand, knowing what you have to do is also, not the hardest thing in the world. So it's a hard one to say. Daniel says, is Afghanistan more or less guaranteed to qualify in the Super 8s, assuming they win against Papua New Guinea and one game against West Indies or New Zealand based on that run rate? No, because West Indies and New Zealand have to play against Uganda as well, and they might have a similar type of thing. New Zealand might lose to the West Indies and smash PNG and Uganda. So no, it's a bit too early to make those sort of judgments, I would say. But it's a big help. I mean, they're the only team, as I said before, that has played the associate the way I think you should play an associate. And they're the team with the big net run rate boost. Harsh says, do you think Scotland could have qualified if they won yesterday? I don't know why, but I thought there was an upset loading. Oh, I thought they were playing really well. I don't know if I thought they were as an upset, but England looked off. So yes, I could see from that point of view, Harsh, where you're going. I think if you are being realistic, Scotland probably got more points out of yesterday's game than they would have if the game had actually gone ahead. I think that's probably, a safe judgment to make. I've got no issue with that. So they've got an extra point out of the game. Means they get to ride again, and they play good, and they get some confidence out of it. I think if that game gets played, the full 20 overs, I think they certainly would have lost. And I think if it was 10 overs, they would have struggled. 5 overs might have been a little bit more interesting with the way that Adil Rashid, they couldn't hit Adil Rashid at the end. And Mark Watt obviously would have been watching that very closely. But yeah, I think Harsh, when it comes down to it, they got points out of that game. And coming in, while they would have optimistically hoped for them, they probably got more out of that game than they assumed. Sherrod says, are the slow pitches partly due to day games in this tournament? Well, Guyana would be slow no matter what. Bridgetown has been a little bit weird for a while as a wicket. New York would be a bad wicket no matter what kind of lighting was on it. The second Dallas game was different than the first one, so it looks like the second one being played in the morning, there's going to be a little bit more juice around. Although it could have been because it was raining as well, but it did feel like there was a little bit more juice around for that one. The evening game wasn't like that at all. So yeah, sometimes it can play a little bit part of it, but I expected these to be slow wickets because it's a World Cup and the pitches that are involved. Quite often what we see. Roll says, recently ODI World Cups have been more entertaining than the T20 World Cups. What have we got? Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I'm trying to think if there was a T20 World Cup that was more interesting. Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think it means all that much. I don't think it's going to change the future of the formats or anything like that. Although it helps ODI cricket from a narrative point of view. But it depends on what you mean by entertaining, because we've had a bunch of close games in this. And did we have any close games in the ODI World Cup at the start of the tournament? So I would have said, based on the previous two tournaments, ODI World Cup and T20 World Cup, this has been more exciting so far. But it hasn't been entertaining from a fours and sixes point of view outside of that one, USA-Canada game. So it's been a little bit more dour. But world events are usually low scoring. I said it was going to be low scoring beforehand, and everyone told me that T20 cricket had changed forever. And here we are on these wickets without an impact sub, and it's gone back to normal with a little bit more pressure in the World Cup. You're playing in the IPL. A lot of pressure on you in many different ways, but you have 13 or 14 more games, right? In a World Cup, you're playing against Papua New Guinea, and the wicket's playing a little bit weird, and you suddenly start to just get a little bit tighter. Things change, right? And I think that's probably a part of the thing that we're seeing here as well. Last one from Harsh. No, there isn't. Yes, it is. Harsh says, can Ireland upset Pakistan considering Pakistan's weak, not so strong batting lineup? Well, Ireland have beaten Pakistan recently, right? So, yes, of course they can beat them again. Look, Ireland could beat India as well. I don't think they will. I think a lot of things would have to go right. But Ireland's just started playing some decent T20 cricket after probably for a long time. It wasn't their best format. ODI was probably their best format, and they struggled. Well, they didn't play many tests, but struggled a little bit in T20 cricket. And I know they took that seriously. I think I did a podcast with Andy Balbirnie about it, where it's a big thing that they've been talking about is just getting better at T20 cricket as well. So yeah, of course they can. There's a couple of things that go in Ireland's favor in that game. Pakistan tend to clam up when things go wrong. So, the ability of their new ball bowlers to take a couple of wickets, which is Ireland's best chance of beating most of these teams, comes in their favour. And Ireland don't have to go up against world-class attacking spinners, right? Imad Wasim is a good bowler, but that's the only world-class spinner that they're going up against at the moment, with Shadab Khan obviously still having problems with his bowling. And they don't have an attacking spinner that they need to worry about. So, Ireland's issues are quite often against people like, Hasaranga and Kuldeep and, even, Taresh Shamsi and Adam Zampa and all these different guys. They're not going up against that with Pakistan. So there's a couple of key matchups, and that's why they've beaten them. Right? It's why they play good cricket against them of recent times. They actually match up quite well. And both these teams are what I would call par teams. They're both obsessed with what par is. And if you're Ireland, also Varun's just said Umad is ruled out of their first game, although we're projecting ahead further anyway. But Imad Wasim is a defensive bowler as well. I'm not as worried about that with Ireland. I'm worried about Ireland losing a bunch of wickets against spin. And that's the issue that they can have. So yeah, I think from that perspective, there's a really good chance of them beating them. But yeah, just a shout out, just to remind you, if I haven't answered your question, it's either because I've answered it on 83 other videos, or it's not something that I want to answer. If you keep asking it again and again, I will just mute you. and go from there. But that's it for me for today. We've got 3 games before for the next scoreboard. So we'll be back again. Yeah, tomorrow, isn't it? We'll be back again tomorrow, and the same thing that we've been saying all the way through. If something incredible happens in one of the games that we're watching, we will try and come on. Or except for the fact when it was Oman and Namibia, and I was so tired, and really felt like I slept through that game. I was like, I don't think putting a camera on me at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. or whatever time that finished my time was actually going to help anyone in the world. But we've done a couple of other live response videos from some of these games, and we will continue to do them when we get a chance into the future. But huge thanks to everyone. So many people in the comments. I've got Crandom, Mookie, AJ, SH Rules, and a couple of others. Also the person, Yashrav, who asked the same question a few times in a row. But big thanks to everyone there. And we will be back again tomorrow for more Scoreboard. I was going to say action. I don't know if this is action. This is kind of the opposite of action, isn't it?
If you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months, plus gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a blocker protects the stumps with NordVPN today.
Celebrate your cricket heroes with Bodyline t-shirts. Explore their player-inspired tees, featuring legends like Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara, and Viv Richards. They also have team-inspired designs and options for hardcore cricket nerds. Their collection is a must-have for the true cricket enthusiast.